Welcome to part 3 of our discussion on tournament scoring criteria, helping you get in the minds of a referee what they're looking for to better help you when it comes to competition. So yet another reminder that the techniques we would use in self-defense are not legal in tournaments, and that's to allow for competitor safety. But the principles behind what would make techniques effective are still present in tournament karate. Now, in part 1, we discussed the scoring criteria of Zanshin. In part 2, we discussed the scoring criteria of correct distance. And in part 3, we're going to cover kind of a nuanced, complicated topic, and that is Aiuchi. So Aiuchi is where two techniques would land simultaneously. But in simpler terms, it's the understanding that both opponents would have been hit. A common pitfall that spectators will fall into is that they see two people throw a technique and one of those techniques lands slightly before the other. 1, 2. You could see there Andrew landed a split second before mine. And because they weren't therefore simultaneous, they think Andrew should be awarded the point. But that's not how it works. But in reality, if Andrew is landing a split second before me, that wouldn't prevent him from being hit if this was a real combat scenario. So remember, tournaments aren't just about techniques, they're about following self-defense principles. So let's take a self-defense scenario. I've got a bully right here in Sensei Andrew, and he wants to do a wild swinging punch and take my face off. Thank you for going nice and gentle. I like my face. If that was self-defense, the last thing that would jump into my mind is maybe I can land a split second before his punch lands. Like, I got him just first. But that would be a terrible habit for self-defense because that hand would still knock me out. So the concept of avoiding Aiuchi, simultaneous striking, is to use the habits that you would use in self-defense. And that is to get in first, to do what we might call an intercepting technique or an anticipation technique, is that your technique should land so early on in the piece that it would actually prevent the opponent's strike from coming out and hitting you, or at worst case, hitting them so early that this would be drastically weakened by the time it landed on me. Bringing that habit back to tournaments, we don't want to be awarding students for bad habits where they would be thinking, okay, an opponent's launched an attack towards me, maybe I can just try to beat them by 1/100th of a second. So when one opponent is attacking another, what referees want to see are good habits to avoid Aiuchi. And that is, one, that interception strike should come out early enough so that it would have stopped the opponent from even throwing theirs in the first place. And if that's something that's not possible, then there are other options. So for example, in real life, if I didn't feel I could intercept his wild swinging punch, what I might try is to block and counter at the same time. Therefore, in a tournament, I might try to block and counter at the same time. You can see here, I've defended this technique, not just tried to beat the technique, and that's a much better habit for self-defense. Therefore, it will be awarded in a tournament. Another habit we might use in real self-defense is to try to get in first. Yes, but by the same token, ensure our opponent's technique misses. Bringing that concept to tournaments, we can try to pick off, but by the same token, not allow our opponent to score on us, as an example. Here. Another option I might try in real life, if someone's coming in swinging and I don't feel I can intercept early enough to prevent that strike from landing, is to go full self-preservation and focus on defending myself and striking afterwards. And bringing that to tournaments, which is blocking and countering rather than trying to always just beat your opponent. So what all of this means is that if two people are in the ring and both are getting hit and one of them lands slightly first, if the referees feel that if it was real, both would have still been hit, the referees will not call Yame. They will let the fight continue, which means you cannot switch off. So once here again, Andrew hits 1, 2, and I'm still going. He switched off, I didn't switch off, I ended up getting the point. Now the final piece of the puzzle is to understand that sometimes techniques might be simultaneous or even one slightly before the other, and the referee will call Yame and issue a point. And that's because they're also looking at all the other scoring criteria. And if one of those techniques didn't meet the scoring criteria, the referee will just ignore their technique altogether and therefore award the other one. Let's look at some examples. Okay, in this instance, we both landed around the same time, but Andrew would be awarded the point because I landed without stance and without a front hand guard, which is a terrible habit for self-defense. Therefore, they would ignore my technique altogether and award him the point. Let's look at another example. So we both touched each other's uniforms at the same time. Andrew's technique met all the scoring criteria. Mine, however, I was pulling out. That's bad form, but also bad distance because my arm was completely straight. They would therefore ignore my technique altogether and just focus on Andrew's, which means Andrew would be scoring the point. So I hope that helps you understand the scoring criteria of Aiuchi. Remember, it's not to be taken too literal. And our goal as referees is for you to have fun, compete safely, test your skills, but also help you understand the consequences of bad habits. Because it's better you get the negative consequences of bad self-defense habits in the ring and be exposed there so you can go back to training and learn and grow than be exposed for your bad habits in self-defense, which could have dire consequences. Until then, enjoy your training.